you know that from around 1850s, pretty much all of the industrial buildings that you would see in any town or city probably have had at least one team of welders work on it. So could you imagine any building in a city or any building in an industrial park would have at least quite a bit amount of welders working on those when they're being constructed? So welding is a very wide variety, or a wide field that can be worked into. And what I would like to tell you about is why I would like to be a welder in that field. Now, the first thing that I'd like to tell you about, or the things that I would like to tell you about, are what is important about it in our society, or in very large countries that have industrial, keeping them as the backbone of their economy. What you should know about the safety of being a welder, which is one of the things that I find important before you even go into the field. And then what welding means to me as a person going into the field. Starting off, I would like to say that there is a lot of things that you might not realize that a welder has probably had a hand in, whether it is somebody operating a machine that welds or somebody who is personally welded, such as you're all from Minnesota. A lot of you are from Minnesota, so some of you might go on boating trips. If you have an aluminum canoe or a pontoon boat, a lot of the pieces that keep the boat afloat are welded by aluminum, which is actually one of the more expensive weldings because aluminum is so finicky. Another thing is pretty much every car that is driven has a bunch of welds put into it, and a lot of that is actually machine welded, so that there is somebody who is not only an expert in robotics, they are also a welder in their same right. Another thing would be, as I have said before, all of these big buildings. Like in this building, there have probably been a bunch of welds in all of the supports that keep this building standing up. And something to keep in mind, that there are a lot of people that talk about, say, how many trees we keep cutting down. And it really varies between how many, or between who you ask, because you count trees differently by how much wood there is or how much square acres were being cut. But it's roughly between 3 and 6 million trees are cut down each year by this country. Now, I'd like to ask you, how much more do you think that would be if all of our supports and a lot of the things that we use were, instead of the metal, it would be replaced with wood? And going on to, or one of the reasons that is that metal, it can get caught on fire, but the main thing is it's a very bad kindling for fire. And unlike wood, metal doesn't soak things up like a sponge, which can make things a very big hazard. Which, going on to my next point, is that there are a lot of things that you need to be aware of when you are a welder. Despite the fact that metal does not catch on fire, if you are given a piece of metal and you're told to weld it, that despite the fact that the metals could be very safe, the surface could not be. Say if there was a paint coating put on it, or if it was a very old piece of metal that had some materials like layered onto it a long time ago that we realized, hey, this could get into people's lungs and kill them, let's not use this anymore. And what I liked about going into this welding career is that every year all of the rules continuously change and look over themselves for flaws, or seeing if there is anything new that can be done. Like within the last 2 years, welders are now required to pay attention to the space that they are welding in, and if they are welding in a very confined space, they need to have air circulation, because there were issues with people welding in these tight spaces, and because you use a lot of electricity and fire to weld things together, it would burn up all the oxygen and people would suffocate without realizing it until it was too late. And seeing as, yes, you do use a lot of electricity is now required for one person to be assigned to watch an area that may have had a machine welded or a specific area welded in a constructed building in case the slag from that weld lights something else on fire. And that has caused, it was somewhere in the 800 fire accidents last year. And another thing, actually, is that you work with a lot of electricity when you're welding, usually, because the two types of welding are either stick welding, which needs you an iron rod, or a rod and a torch, or the various other kinds of welding that you feed the wire in, and the machine electrocutes the wire and it welds the pieces together. High voltage is very dangerous, and almost all of these weldings have to have you pay attention to that, because even the smaller voltages can either cause you short-term muscle problems, joint problems, and sometimes even death if you are not careful enough. But speaking of all the scary things about welding, I want to start speaking about all the things that I think are important to remember about welding for me, because what I like about it is that you're taking things that are relatively worthless when you're sitting them by themselves, but when you're done with your work, you've created something whole that has purpose and meaning to it, like, say, the bolts or the buildings or the cars. And I've known this for a long time because as I was a kid, my parents kept telling me how I loved to play around with clay. I like to build things and make things. And I know this because I have a bunch of Legos sitting around that I've always built stuff out of them too. So going into welding, I've always thought that, you know, if I'm going to do a job, I may as well do a job where I'm putting something together and making something out of it. And I would say that is all that I need to tell you about what is important about welding, what you need to know, being safe about it, and what it means to me. So, questions?
In your third, I think it was, topic, you mentioned that it was now, as of this year, required to have someone watch specific welded spots, I believe. And I was just wondering who required it. Is it required by law? Is it required by...
It is required by OSHA, the people who make all of the rules regarding safety in the industry. And they are part of the organization, or the National Safety Foundation, which is government oriented.
Do you wear that apron while you weld?
Yes. In fact, I would wear more than this when I'm welding, which I would have a set of sleeves, which are also a set of leather. There would be the welding mask, which usually gets very bright, which you also need to pay attention to. And then, of course, it is advised to wear the steel-toed boots, even though they're not particularly required, but you're in an industrial environment, so it is a good idea. All right.
Do you TIG or MIG welding?
It's, I do TIG, but I'm going to be learning about all of them throughout this. Thank you all.
All right, now Shelby, and